wise Jedi Master that carries us through the fantasies of Star Wars with words of wisdom and the eternal truths of the Jedi Master are relevant today as they were whenever this was supposed to have happened. Do you remember in the first Star Wars movie, not the episode, but the first movie that was released back in the 70s, and Luke wanted to be a Jedi. He wanted to be a Jedi so bad, and so he went out and he searched the universe for this master teacher, and he landed on the planet of, how do you say it? Dagobah. And he's talking to Yoda, and he doesn't think Yoda's anything because he's this weird-looking little elfy kind of a dude. And Yoda just starts feeding him these pearls of wisdom. And they're in this this foresty kind of dark place, and Yoda is saying things like, when Luke says, "I don't believe it," Yoda says, "And that is why you fail." And the X-fighter, crashes in the lake, and Yoda wants Luke to lift it out of there with the power of the Force. And Luke says, "I can't because it's too big." Or first he says, "I'll try." And Yoda says, "No try, do not do. There is no try." And so there's this idea that says if you want to be a Jedi, if you want to be able to connect with the Force, the spiritual reality of life, and allow it to move through you in a way that you can do good for the universe and be the bearer of all that great stuff that the Jedis do, then you have to stop playing the small game in your thought. You have to stop looking at things as impossible. You have to stop looking at things as too big. And when Luke, just to take you back memory lane, when Luke looked at life, looked at that X-Wing fighter as something that he could connect with, he brought it out of the swamp. When he needed his lightsaber, he brought it to him instead of him having to go to it. And so, Judith, you've just really sparked me, and there's so much to that story that didn't get told. I want you to know that your secret was not as big a secret as you thought, and that I was very aware that you did not have groceries. And that there are people in this center that have trouble taking care of their basic needs, and often I know that. But I will not run to you with a bag of groceries. I won't do it. I will have faith that you will work it out. And sometimes we have to get our backs up against the wall before we are willing to do what we have been so afraid of doing. I remember one meeting that we had, and I said, I got nothing else for you. I already told you what to do. You won't do it. And now you're experiencing the effect of that fear. I cannot intervene on your behalf and stop your effects from your causes. I have nothing else to give you. All that I have is this awareness that spirit is all that there is, that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings, alive and well on planet Earth, directing every molecule of our experience through our thoughts and beliefs. And that as long as we direct it in a certain direction, that's what we will get. And we will never get the other direction until we start directing it in that other direction. There is no other way to go. It's all inside of us. And so I wanted to talk about facing our fear. And the acronyms, false evidence appearing real and all of that. In the words of my incredibly wise husband, that puts fear outside of you. Fear is on the inside. It is our made up scenario about what will happen in the future. It is the total misuse of the power of faith, that when we have absolute faith that something horrible is going to happen, we experience fear. The horrible thing has not happened, and we can just as easily shift that faith to the idea that we are connected with all things. I mean, why was, am I the only Star Wars nut here? Why was the Force so compelling to us? Because it connects us with all things. It is the power of life itself that moves through us, that we can use, that connects us, that joins us, that brings whatever awareness or guidance or teaching that we need into our experience. And when we have this idea that says there's anything outside of us, we open up ourselves up to this idea of fear. And one of the things Yoda said that I really looked at was that you must name your fear before you can release it. And I thought, well, really, do we have to go into naming our fears and all of that, putting energy into it? But there are times when looking at what I was so afraid of, I found very helpful. And you may not know this about me, but when I walked into a Science of Mind Center at 24 years old with a 3-year-old, no place to live, no job, no money, I was terrified. I was terrified of life. I was terrified of my shadow. I had to teach myself how to be comfortable with my voice. I used to read out loud in my home so that I would know what my voice sounded like, so that I wouldn't jump whenever I said anything in my little mousy kind of a way. And so looking at this idea of fear and saying, okay, Barbara, what are you really afraid of? Well, I'm afraid the earth will open up and swallow me up. Okay, then what? Well, then I will be swallowed by the earth. Okay, but then what? What are you afraid of? That I will be dead. Okay, you're afraid you'll be dead. Then what? What are you afraid of? What are you so afraid of? Because my biggest fear was of being seen and of being heard. And I really had to deal with that for me to live the life that I believe I was meant to live. I had to face my fear of being seen and being heard and being here and having a right to be here to be able to move forward. And so I would ask myself these questions. What are you so afraid of? What are you afraid is going to happen? Well, the ice won't melt and someone will slip and fall. Okay, and then what? What are you so afraid of? That someone slipped and fall? People slip and fall all the time. There are people here, we don't need the little buzzer, I've fallen and I can't get up. It'll be okay. What are you so afraid of in life? What are you afraid is going to happen? And I say that to let you ask yourself that question. What is holding you back? You know, Judith, you were already stone cold broke. What else is there to lose? You could get kicked out of your house. You could end up, sleeping in your car. You could get your car repossessed. But there comes a point in time when I think that we have to be willing to experience the concerns that have driven us and held us back. We have to be willing to go there and say, I am so over this experience that if it takes, if I'm risking losing everything, I'm willing to risk it. Not a week ago, in terms of hours, we had the Firewalk. How many people were at the Firewalk? It was amazing. Do you know how many times I have walked on fire? I have walked on fire lots and lots. And yet still, I walked up to that fire last Sunday night and I said inside of my head, I'm just going to throw up right here. I'm standing in front of the fire. I'm just going to throw up. I had so much concern and anxiety in me. I knew I could walk across the fire and not get burned, but I also had this fear that I would, and it's chronic with me and firewalks, that I will step on the fire and burst into flames. Wow. That I will just die right there in the middle of the fire. And I took a deep breath and I said, if I'm going to die in the middle of the fire, then that's what will happen. And I took a step. And because I was willing to have that, it had no power over me anymore. It couldn't say, you better watch out because you may die. You better watch out because you may fall on your face. You better not try because things could go wrong. I think there's a point when we say, okay, I may fall on my face. Things may go wrong. It may turn out completely different than I thought it was going to turn out, but I'm going to do it anyway because I am not willing to stay where I am. And I think then we move into this greater idea where we understand that we do have support, that we are connected. You call it the force, you call it spirit, whatever it is, energy, source, that there is something that connects us and that we are not all alone in the universe, that our lives are manifesting exactly as we are moving towards it, it is moving towards us. So what direction are we going? If I want to go to Happy Land, I have to start moving toward Happy Land. And if I want to go to misery, I got to start moving toward misery. And then those things will come and meet me and have this experience with me. Facing your fear. What is your fear? We've all got it. I don't think anybody still on this planet doesn't have any fear. What are you afraid of? If you say what you really think. If you are who you really are meant to be. What are you afraid of? If you get up on stage and say, I have a different idea of what God is, of who we are, that we are magnificent, spiritual beings alive and well on planet Earth, and that we can create our lives any way we want. We can have whatever we want by first becoming that within ourselves. And people look at me and say, you are out of your mind. And I go, I would rather be out of my mind than to be in the mind of you. I would rather risk it all for love, for joy, for health, for wholeness. I would rather risk it all. I think that once we pull this fear out, what are we afraid of? And we look at it in the light of day instead of in the dark recesses of our psyche. And we are willing to face it and to do whatever it's keeping us from doing anyway. What's the worst that can happen? We could die. I have a news flash. We are all going to die. And according to Abraham, if we knew what was on the other side, we would all go jump off the bridge. Nothing can hurt us. The only thing that can hurt us are the lies that we make up in our head. I spent decades working on fear. Until relatively recently, my sister and I really believed that we would be bad ladies at some point in our life, and we would be homeless. How weird is that? I mean, relatively recently in the last few decades. But that was just a given. Okay, well, we're going to survive as best we can, and then when it comes to the end, you and I will be bad ladies together because we're going to be homeless. That was just an ingrained fear that we weren't going to be okay. If we stand up straight and tall, what are we afraid of? If we dance our dance, if we live our life, if we love that person that we want to love with no holes barred, what are we afraid of? If we go out, quit our job, and go into business for ourselves, what are we afraid of? Well, it may not work. Well, it may not. But at least we did what was ours to do. And I believe that every step in our life is a step closer to where we are supposed to be. And sometimes we zigzag our way, and sometimes we go pretty direct. But to die with our song unsung, to hold back when we have this understanding of all of the power in the universe that is within us, that God is not only right where we are, God is what we are. And that if we focus on a direction, all of heaven and earth will come together to bring that into our experience. To not do that when we have this much understanding of who we are, and forgive me, is cowardice. To be able to pull back and say, no, it's asking too much of me. You know, we actually have people leave the center because we ask too much of them. I don't think I can ever ask too much of you. I will ask everything of you. I will ask you to leave your smallness behind. I will ask you to leave the fear in the past, or in the future, which is the only place it can exist. I will ask you to give up all of the ideas that you have that you can't. And what you will find, just like Luke did, is that instead of being just some adopted kid to his aunt and uncle, instead of just working on the farm on some planet with 2 moons, instead of being nobody, he was more than somebody. All of God is in us at the point of us. You got a little fear? Who cares? Laugh at it. Send it back into the nothingness from whence it came. Don't give it any energy. Don't give it any life. And it cannot live. It's all inside of our heads. We are all creating it in our minds. So think about it. Really? This is why you're not happy? Because you might end up dead? So you want to live an entire life unhappy and then die? That's your choice? Step out. Who was it? A very famous woman writer for the magazine, not Helen Gurley Brown, but someone around that time, said, if you're going to walk on thin ice, you might as well dance. So if you're going to go out there in life and do something like being an amazing spiritual being, creating what you want in life, and you get a fear coming up, don't be surprised. Just walk right over it. Just keep on going where you're going and do what you're doing. And go where you're supposed to go and watch how the entire universe comes together in concert and harmony to support you every step of the way. It's our decision. It's our choice, the direction that we go, but it is our courage that has us take the steps to get there. And I commend you for being people of courage this day. It's not an easy teaching that says you can have whatever you want. You just have to first be it. But if you embrace it, and if you move towards it, and if you face whatever fear may be standing in your way and keep going, you will find that you have made the impossible possible, that you have made miracles an everyday reality, and that life is totally, totally a blessing every moment. And I encourage you, a little fear? Ha! Go for it anyway. And so it is.